Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori and this is Africa 54. First tonight, Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir was in South Sudan to discuss that nation's ongoing violence. In Addis Ababa, negotiators for President Salva Kiir and opposition leader Riek Machar are struggling to hold substantive peace talks. Meanwhile, a convoy of Ugandan military vehicles has been seen moving towards the volatile key city of Bor, where heavy fighting is reported in the suburbs. The Ugandans are reportedly supporting the South Sudanese army. The negotiations to end fighting that began in mid-December were planned to begin in Ethiopia last week, but the delegations have not been able to overcome issues like rebel demands for the release of detained politicians. South Sudan Information Minister Makori said the government will not give in to pressure to immediately release politicians detained after an alleged coup attempt last month.
We are not ready to negotiate on preconditions. This is why we are here. The question of the release of the detainees should not be annexed to the successful peace talks. We came here to talk peace without conditions and to come and tell us that release these people so that the talk is a condition and we are not ready to accept any precondition.
Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said that Washington is closely watching the peace talks.
The United States will support those who seek peace, but we will deny support. And we will work to apply international pressure to any elements that attempt to use force to seize power.
Fighting continued across the country Sunday as government troops continued attempts to reclaim the rebel-held city of Bor, capital of Jonglei State. Well, for more on the U.S. position on the South Sudan situation, I'm joined by phone by Scott Stearns, U.S. State Department correspondent. Hello, Scott.
Yes, Vincent.
Now, we heard the Secretary of State saying that the U.S. will support those who stand for peace and deny support to those who oppose it. Can you clarify a little further what kind of support will be given and what kind of punishment, or rather what will be done to those who do not support peace?
You certainly would believe that Secretary Kerry is speaking of the IGAD process and the move by countries in the region to stand up the government in Juba if there's a failure to reach accord between the Salva Kiir and Riek Machar factions, that the U.S. would support regional efforts to isolate the Riek Machar group. That said, the United States is bringing pressure to bear on the government in Juba over this issue of the detainees, the Riek Machar delegates. He says that he's unable to open these talks in Addis because the people who he would have represent him are in detention in Juba, that they are the alleged coup plotters whose arrest sort of began this whole process, and the U.S. is hoping that those delegates will be released so that they can attend these talks.
A very dicey situation there, but nevertheless, we know that right from the get-go, the U.S. has been involved. The Special Envoy to Sudan and South Sudan, Donald Booth, was there. Do you have any information as to where he is at this moment, whether he has been in Addis Ababa?
Yes, as you say, he's been actively involved in the region, but I have to think that it almost feels like a step backwards for U.S. diplomacy in the region. You know, Princeton Lyman, who had that job before Don Booth, spent a lot of time in Addis for talks between the government of Sudan and the government of South Sudan on moving forward on oil and resolving some of the long-standing border issues. You know, now you've got talks in Addis between elements of a divided South Sudan. So it's certainly not the direction that U.S. diplomacy hoped to be involved in.
In terms of humanitarian aid, what kind of level of involvement does the U.S. have in South Sudan?
The U.S. continues to be involved in the pre-existing humanitarian situation in those border areas and increasing assistance for those who have been displaced by this fighting. But, the situation, the instability in Bor makes it difficult really to assess the needs of those displaced and complicates transport of materials to help those people in a situation where it's already difficult to supply those in need.
Scott, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
VOA Scott Stearns reporting live from the State Department.